Florida is the kind of place that can turn ambitions into daydreams, and Pensacola Gulf Breeze has everything that lures people to Florida, including something more than just stars in the night sky.
As this, drama unfolds, we're talking about something that history is going to record as a very major development in the life of this planet.
Almost every night for the past few years, people have come to Shoreline Park in Gulf Breeze. They spend hours watching for a UFO.
I believe that we'd be awful small to think that we're the only intelligent life forms in this universe.
Their search is often fruitful. A strange light performs here about once every 3 days.
We have people that have come down here that want to see what it is, but they'll tell you up front that they think it's the demon, the devil, or something like that.
So when is it that you think that the rest of those will?
The mystery of the Gulf Breeze skies begins with Ed Walters.
They'll just pop right in, not a problem.
His story has convinced many UFOs are real.
And I hear those words coming out of my lips, and I go, well, I know that sounds crazy, but seeing is believing.
Ed Walters does not qualify as a kook.
And that keeps it coming back down.
He is a successful builder and active in his community. He is also willing to say publicly another form of intelligence has arrived on Earth.
Yeah, it is weird. You're sitting here, Florida, beautiful, nice sunny day, wind blowing in our hair, and talking about alien beings from wherever, and it sounds crazy, but it is a reality, and eventually people will have to accept that there is something very strange going on.
And he may have proof. Ed Walters has taken the most spectacular photographs ever of an unidentified flying object, and they have angered as many people as they have amazed.
When you see it and you try to explain it away, conventional arguments about balloons and flares and advertising planes, because you stand there and you look at it yourself and go, God, look at that.
Walters says this UFO persistently dogged him, and he took these photos with an old instant film camera. The most famous shot shows the object landing on the road as Walters drives to work. He says 5 beings came out as he drove away.
They wouldn't pick the village drunk. They're going to pick someone that is credible, someone that can stand up to the debunkers, to the criticism that's involved.
One picture shows the UFO emitting a blue beam. In another shot, his wife narrowly avoids the beam, and skepticism grows.
I think it's a great prank. I wish I had been involved. Someone's having a lot of fun at the expense of a lot of very sincere and silly people. Someone's having a lot of fun in games.
There is also a tape. Walters made this home video in his backyard. Slowed down, the recording shows an object similar to the one in the photos. There appears to be no incontrovertible proof either the tape or photos are phony.
I looked very hard to find proof that within the photos, proof that they had to be hoaxed. Could you find supports or something like that for the objects? And found nothing. Instead, what I found was difficulty in creating the pictures if they were hoaxes.
At this conference of physicists, Bruce Maccabee presented 2 papers on Gulf Breeze. He got a small room off to the side of the main gathering.
There are hundreds or thousands of people out there who claim that they have seen odd things flying through the sky and so on, and the response to the scientific community has generally been a big ho-hum.
Maccabee is an optical physicist working on the Star Wars project for the Defense Department. After his photo analysis, he was later paid to write a chapter for Ed Walters' successful book about Gulf Breeze. Feeling compelled to prove he was not crazy, Ed Walters came to this park at 1 o'clock in the morning with a special camera to get a photo of the UFO. And it was here that an otherwise sane and successful man began to claim he was abducted by extraterrestrial beings. Walters got the picture and says the UFO got him.
I was here, and then suddenly I was there, in my mind. But in reality, what had happened was, after that whiteout, an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes had disappeared.
This is the first time Walters has released tapes of his hypnosis sessions, and they show his fear during recall.
The details that came out from under the hypnosis were absolutely bizarre. Seeing a UFO is one thing. Being involved with UFO occupants, UFO-nauts, if you will, is something, even further.
The stereo camera shots are history's first ever of a UFO and make it possible to measure size and distance. For the debunkers, these shots raise questions of Ed Walters' credibility. But the believers have disturbing questions of their own. What are these, and what are they doing here? Jim Moore, Gulf Breeze, Florida. The night can play tricks on the mind. No one knows that better than the people of Gulf Breeze, Florida.
The one in the middle then, as we watched it, began to expel something. It was as if somebody took 1,000 little sparklers for the 4th of July and just let them drop.
But the night sky of Gulf Breeze has revealed more than lights. Several people here have photographed an unidentified flying object.
It's so hard for the average person to accept this, Ed. How do you deal with that?
Well, I don't, because like I've said so often, seeing is believing.
It won't be quite so large.
Seeing is also doubting. Rex Salisbury is a UFO investigator who claims Ed Walters used a double exposure technique to make his famous pictures.
It's merely a matter of scaling. And who does scaling?
Builders.
Builders. That's their stock and trade.
The photo, a first effort, is crude and in no way compares to the famous road shot. Walters would have had to turn fraud into science to make this picture, but Salisbury says it's fake.
The top light and the lighted top of the UFO itself should appear on the hood as a reflection. It does not. And also, if there's something out there at 370 feet with that intensity of a light, it should cause some kind of diffuse illumination on the road, and it does not.
The people were seeing a bright red light that got dim.
Optical physicist Bruce Maccabee says the hood's reflection was altered by a previous collision. He examined the photos and pronounced them genuine.
There may be nothing in the skies over Gulf Breeze but some form of an aircraft. But just the idea that a UFO has selected this place to appear has deeply divided this community and turned it into a case study on human psychology.
Ed Walters has had his character attacked since he went public with his UFO photos. He has not hidden the fact he served a short prison term for auto theft as a young man and was later given complete pardon by the governor. Walters expected the scrutiny.
There is a certain obligation on the part of the witnesses and people that are involved with this. There's a certain obligation to stand up and be counted. And so therefore I'm sitting with you and I'm telling you that these things happened. Whether somebody chooses to believe it or not, that's okay.
A one-time teenage friend of Walters' son told police it was all a fake and that he, Walters, had made up the whole thing. Photographs of spaceships. Tommy Smith also said he, Walters, told me he was going to die and go to his grave with this story because he planned on making money from it. He said the picture of the power source was made by stuffing orange crepe paper into a cardboard model.
some of the major UFO clubs have got so much of their reputations now locked up with that case that it's a vain hope to expect any honest or competent attempt to solve it.
And then a cardboard model, similar to this one, turned up in Walter's attic after he moved, and it was discovered shortly before a national UFO conference here.
No chance of water getting around there because you got that seal.
Ed Walters, meticulous builder with an eye for detail, had managed to move and leave behind the one thing which could incriminate him, right next to a crimp in some copper tubing, where a repairman would discover it.
I am convinced that the evidence we have in hand at this point indicates that the photos must be hoaxed.
None of that explains what happened when Walters and his wife Frances showed up for a nightly sky watch.
Yo, Baba! Right there!
An anomalous light appeared in the northwest sky. It seemed to split and then rotate.
Oh, it's turning.
It's rotating, huh?
Yeah.
The KHOU tape was analyzed by Maccabee.
Well, it's incontrovertible evidence that there was something there. And furthermore, it had no right to be there, so far as we know. It was illegal.
For 6 minutes, the light hung there inexplicably. It began to flash, almost as if in response to a floodlight being blinked by one of the witnesses.
2, 3.
Because of the way this thing can just suddenly appear from out of a clear sky, fly around, and then boom, it's gone. Tell me we've got technology like that.
The object was located very near the Pensacola Naval Air Station. A spokesman would later say radar showed no commercial or military aircraft at that time. The light did not exist, except on this KHOU tape, which proves nothing other than people are amazed.
Yes! Yes! Go, Baba, go!
The night sky sets most people to dreaming, but some it fills with fear. They are convinced they are being taken in their sleep by UFOs.
And it's not made up, it's not fantasy, it's not dream, it's not delusion, it's actual.
New York artist Bud Hopkins is generally credited with uncovering the abduction phenomenon.
This is taking my guardian image that
He has written 2 books about people taken against their will by beings of higher intelligence.
One of the first things I think can be said is that this is happening to millions of people. I live every day of my life as if none of this is true.
The beings are always described as looking like this, with large heads and black almond-shaped eyes. And to people who have seen them, they are more than just a dream.
I have consciously seen one of these little creatures. I was hoping that I was only dreaming. But when I saw one of these little fellas at the foot of my bed, and I was awake, consciously awake, I knew it was happening to me.
Because she fears ridicule, Linda's face has been concealed, and she understands the urge to scoff.
It's bizarre, isn't it? It's bizarre, and I'll tell you, I can't blame anyone for heavy skepticism. I was one of them myself. It has to happen to you before you can actually come to some understanding of what's going on.
I've had an MRI scan done where...
Alice Haggerty is more afraid of the others than she is reaction to her story. She believes beings have been taking her aboard a UFO since she was a child, mostly for genetic purposes.
I've got a feeling that they don't have a soul and they're dying off, and then they need a part of us to continue living. And this is their only way of doing it.
Betty Andreasen has turned the experience into art. She is paralyzed by a light as small gray beings come into her room. They are then floated aboard a craft. She has memories of being implanted one time, and then 3 or 4 months later, a fetus is taken from her. She says she has even seen this hybrid offspring as it is nurtured in some type of electronic incubatorium. Alice Haggerty says she has had 7 unborn children taken from her by aliens.
I find that I'm pregnant, go to the doctors, have it confirmed, and within 3 months' time, there's just no baby in the stomach, no miscarriage, nothing to show that the baby has been taken, it's just gone.
Dr. John Mack of Harvard University is an unlikely person to believe in the abduction phenomenon, but nothing in psychiatry accounts for the similarity of experiences people are reporting, and he is convinced mankind has finally come face to face with another intelligence.
All you have to do is sit in on a session when you're coming close to one of the more powerful memories, and you see the terror, and you feel the terror, you see the person shaking, you see the resistance. They don't want to look at the face of the aliens.
The idea is not without controversy at one of the nation's most prestigious universities.
Harvard is not the only place where this possibility is being considered. Another scientist here in Boston at MIT is studying an object removed from a man's body. The suspicion is it was implanted there by another life form.
Phil Klass finds the notion of alien implants preposterous, but the longtime editor of Aviation Week magazine offers only cults as an explanation for the phenomenon.
If this is simply a fantasy, a cult, as I believe it is, then our citizens are being subjected to needless worries.
Are you ready for a rapid descent into the bizarre?
At Temple University, Dr. David Jacobs has been studying the abduction phenomenon for years. The incidents reported to him have so many patterns, he has dismissed the idea they are fantasy. And now he is forced to entertain the disturbing possibility another intelligence is using humans in experiments.
It is frightening. It's scary. It's terrifying. And when we look at this phenomenon, we don't like it. We don't see very much that's good coming from this. We really don't see anything that we feel is going to benefit us.
The evidence does not impress aerospace engineer Jim Oberg of Houston. He has debunked UFOs for years. He sees the new body of information as meaningless.
Well, there's piles and piles of it. It's getting deeper and deeper, and there's lots of piles like that. I got piles of stuff like that down on my ranch.
There are things we do not know about the human mind, but the experts find it impossible to believe these scenarios are part of a common imagination, and no one can explain why fantasy would wear a face like this. Nothing touches us like the art of children, and little could be more horrifying than a boy's drawing of a strange being sticking a needle in his eye.
This really does undermine virtually everything. And it puts a question mark at the end of each day's existence. That is an unsettling place to have a question mark.
Rusty Hudson is certain beings have been abducting him since he was a child and taking genetic material from him.
Because I know that from these experiences that the world is not the way that it was portrayed to me as a child growing up.
The work goes on.
New York researcher Bud Hopkins counsels hundreds of abductees. For children, he has developed a test using familiar faces. Some of them know this image.
They're taking our children, they're messing around with all of us. I think people should be aware.
These lights are all off.
Hopkins uses hypnosis to recover UFO experiences.
Just close your eyes.
In this case, Rusty recalls a strange light around a glass of water he was drinking, and it leads him outside.
There's something big and black in the sky over me. just went up real fast, real fast. It almost didn't feel like me going up, but like the ground dropped away out from under me.
Rusty's memory finds him aboard a craft of some kind, paralyzed and being confronted by an unusual being.
I think he's staying far enough away because he knows if I look at him too directly, I'll be too scared. He's sending me the feeling that he's glad to see me. He's okay, but I don't like what they want to do.
By the time it is over, he has had sexual experiments conducted on him and is returned to his home with no conscious memory.
See, there's a kind of theft involved, which makes me infuriated. It's the theft of one's own recollected life.
At the headquarters of the Mutual UFO Network, their files are beginning to overflow with abduction reports.
It appears that they're trying to crossbreed with humans in order to build up the stature of the entity, shall we call it.
I think we all have these abilities.
John Salter has conscious memory of his UFO experiences, and the University of North Dakota professor is aware the other intelligence has harvested sperm from his body.
I'm glad that my genes have gone into the broader universe. Half-breeds have long played important roles in bridging race and culture. I'm a half-breed myself.
This drawing.
But at UFO conferences, disturbing images are presented. Many people who claim to be abductees say beings are giving them frightening messages.
When we come in '92, it will not be a confrontation. It will not be a contest. The contest is over. It will just simply be an announcement. No need to think that we're invading. That's already been done. There's not going to be a contest for control. We've already got it.
Talk of the creation of a hybrid alien-human race and a planetary invasion could also be described as a waste of intellectual energy.
There are hybrid children. Where is the chromosome mapping of these children? Where's even a speck of physical evidence?
Oh, I sent out a manuscript.
Dr. David Jacobs of Temple University has written a book called Secret Life, detailing the creation of this hybrid race. His information comes from dozens of UFO abductees.
I can't really tell you what it's all about. I can't tell you what it all means. All I can tell you is that it's very, very disturbing. It's very unsettling.
Much of the American consciousness about another intelligence can be traced to this old quarry in downtown San Antonio.
He talked about there being, kind of instruction.
This is where Texas writer Whitley Strieber believes he and other children made contact with what he calls the visitors.
But he felt like something was taken from them, but that something was given to them as well. And
author Ed Conroy spent 2 years investigating Strieber's communion experiences.
I think in a way that these experiences can indeed almost be interpreted as a form of grace in traditional Christian theology.
Strieber's book was such a phenomenon in its own right that Conroy wrote a book about the book. He says contact with the other intelligence is being portrayed as frightening for monetary reasons.
The fact is that joy doesn't sell at all, fear does. And these guys are selling a story, and they're selling it for media attention, and they're getting it.
Good or bad, real or imagined, there is something afoot, and it defies our ability to understand. No one can explain this. Cattle are discovered dead and mutilated. Sexual organs are gone, jaws stripped of flesh, and there is never a drop of blood left within the carcass.
When we first looked at it, it was just unbelievable that you could take an animal and do this too without leaving some kind of track, some kind of evidence behind.
But there is never a trace of human involvement. In decades, no arrests, and predators will not go near the fallen animals. Cuts show the heat precision of a laser.
Reported seeing a calf rising in a beam of...
Emmy Award-winning documentary producer Linda Moulton Howe says witnesses have told her of small gray beings near cattle mutilations.
I am convinced that there is some kind of an intelligence involved with this planet on the sheer face of the evidence, and the evidence is in.
The evidence also includes the crop circle phenomenon, strange symbols which form in grain fields around the world.
And I think this is changing us. I think what is happening now is possibly the next stage in human evolution.
The energies in the circle.
George Wingfield thinks the crop circle phenomenon is so important he quit his job as a computer systems engineer and is traveling the world speaking of the phenomenon.
This subject defies all modern attempts at modern technical levels to come to grips with this to provide an answer. It defies everything. There is no way through at the moment.
Two English men have tried to take credit for making the complex designs using boards and rope. They say they went public because they were tired of the gag.
We're the instigators of the patterns. We're the ones that designed them, we're the ones that's done them, and we're the ones that have finished with them.
They're also the ones who sold their story to a tabloid, and circles are still forming.
And they said just a month before, they said, well, somebody's going to make a lot of money by going to the tabloid newspapers and saying, we did these crop circles, it's all us, hey. And it's exactly what they did.
This may be the most troubling image, a formation representing a recently discovered mathematical theory called the Mandelbrot set, defining chaos out of order.
There's the thing.
And about 9 months ago, two German students filmed this odd light flying into one of the formations. In part because of the association with UFOs, the British government has kept a judicious distance from this phenomenon.
The official position of the U.S. government is that UFOs do not exist, although the military has conducted at least 2 full-scale investigations. Findings have been inconclusive.
But the government may have been involved in an incident along this East Texas highway in 1980.
It was a solid physical thing. It did damage the road out here. It damaged the car they were in. It damaged the 3 people involved. It was followed by multiple helicopters.
3 people saw a diamond-shaped object above the road. About 24 helicopters followed it. The witnesses were Betty Cash and Vicki Landrum, and Landrum's grandson, Colby.
If there is UFOs like we're talking about that's smarter than we are that come in here, the government is going to have to own up to it.
This was Betty Cash before the sighting. Then she began to suffer hair loss associated with radiation poisoning. She has since endured a double mastectomy. Vicki Landrum developed sores on her body and other symptoms typical of radiation exposure.
We wouldn't have burned ourselves. We wouldn't have pulled our hair out. We wouldn't have pulled our fingernails off. We wouldn't have had sores that when I'd go to the grocery store, people would get in the other eye.
The military has denied the presence of helicopters on that night, and a lawsuit filed against the federal government was thrown out.
Something from outer space, some secret government weapon, swamp gas, ball lightning. They're all candidates. And that kind of puzzlement, the fact there is no final solution to it, keeps my fascination going.
Many people believe all this is a message, but that idea generates profound questions of its own. Who is sending it, and what are its intentions?